Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
Perfect. And welcome everybody to a hopefully very interactive session today, which is a little bit of a passion project of mine. And I know Sean is definitely there with me. We want association to rethink a little bit of how they design their events. And coming out of today, we hope you will get at least one idea, one tip, one trick on what you could do next. We are not advocating for you to totally overhaul everything, but be much more intentional and think about how you are designing your events. While I am chatting a little bit, I would ask 7 volunteers or less to be our helpers today. And Sean will drop a special in your DM, in your message, a link. You will be the ones spinning the wheels for us. So we don't want everybody to start spinning the wheel because then we'll have anarchy. But we do appreciate a couple of volunteers. So just drop in the chat if you're willing to help out. And Sean will give you a link and we'll let you know when you're ready to spin. So without further ado, I want to say, just let me quickly introduce myself, and then I'm going to hand off also to Sean. I'm Xenia Pola, as Nicole said. I work with the Tally Management Group as their Director of International Development, but have been in the space of associations and association meetings for over 3 decades. And as mentioned, very passionate about experience design, not looking at meetings purely as logistical gatherings, but really creating that intentional ecosystem of connections, innovation, and hopefully what we'll be sharing today will give you also some ideas on how to create some new design ideas for your events. Sean, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Sanyat, and good morning and good afternoon, everyone, no matter where you're calling. My name is Sean Chen. I am working for ICAD, stand for International Congress and Convention Associations. Before ICAD, I was with the meeting agency specialized in international association meeting for closer to a decade. And like Sanyat said earlier, I think my passion is not music, it's not dancing, it's actually coming up with a different way of doing events, which is in some ways a little sad, but in another way it's very exciting. So I'm looking for this discussion with everyone in the chat. And as you can see, we already tried to engage with you in the chat. So hopefully this will be a really interactive one.
And we want to have your engagement right off the bat. So if you could pull up your phone and join us on Slido and let us know what type of events are you primarily responsible for? Is it annual conferences, trade shows? Look at your main flagship event. So yes, we are here having annual conferences as our main, which is not coming as a surprise. And really leads us into our next slide. Sean, your favorite?
Yes. So, I mean, I don't know, like maybe we're just using the reaction buttons in the Zoom that if you saw this before at your event. And I think that's kind of what's the challenge that we are all facing, especially in the association space. We kind of get used to it. Right. I don't know how many of you have this conversation with your team at the back of the room. Is like, oh well, people are fall asleep. It's probably AC is true. Maybe we should crank out the AC a little bit, or we just kind of like in some way we kind of default that well, keynote is meant to get people's attention for 15 minutes, and people gonna fall asleep. And then we're gonna wake people up, and then they're gonna go do that again, right? And we get a lot of the reason that we keep convincing ourselves that it's okay, it's normal, right? People need to get their credit. People always need to come, and this is always like that. Like, my member don't like to change. The perfect example for many of you probably is, I spent 10 years to convince my board, don't do a printing poster book, right? So they don't like to change, right? But I think what we like to do today is like, but I guess like we need to, right? And then Stenya probably will be able to take over now with a few example of kind of where we are today, right? Because at the same time, we're all facing the challenge of if we don't change, what will happen?
Exactly. And I love that Sina is saying falling asleep or looking on the phone. And I'm struggling with my clicker today. So before we get really started, one last engagement questions in the past 18 months, what has shifted most in your environment? Whether it's technology, AI, attendance patterns, budgets. This will also lead us very much into the conversations which we'll do around the design wheel. But it immediately takes a pulse on what is top of mind for all of you. Yes, goodness gracious, no surprise there. Sean, for you?
Yeah, no surprise because just do a little self promotion here. Is ICA did publish a report early in January, which is the association's needs report that we do that every year, and we interview all the international association about kind of what is the most challenge they are facing, and it's very aligned with what our survey show, which is cost is the number one concern in everyone's mind.
Yeah, and I see in the chat a lot of the attendance numbers are down,
Mhm.
which will touch on all of that, on costs, attendance, and audience. But before we do, I do want to set the scene very briefly that the environment has shifted without a doubt. And those shifts and those forces are not minor. They are really structural. Um, Attendance is no longer simply a matter of demand, and you are the only kid in the block putting on an event. People may not get approval. They may hesitate because of travel policies, budgets, risks, workloads. So we have to really think on it from a different perspective. Costs isn't just an inconvenience. They are changing rapidly. Outside of our control, forces are influencing costs. And it is not only annually, it is almost on a daily basis. Sponsors and their expectations are changing. Many are no longer just happy to go along with yes, getting some kind of exposure, their logos, but they want to be really part of the design of your event. So those are some of the things we'll be touching as well with our design wheel. Technology has shifted, and that was actually, as we did the last poll, one of the top things came up straight away. It did drop down after the costs and attendance and geopolitics. But from the attendance perspective, a lot are expecting a lot of personalization. So how can we make it easy for attendees to connect, to understand, to create their personalized pathways for your event? You're literally creating not one event. If you have 1,000 attendees, you are creating an environment, an ecosystem for 1,000 meetings. So those are some tremendous mindset shifts for you. And then, of course, leadership, boards, executives, they are expecting also totally different things than they did a year ago or 5 years ago. They are asking you, why this event? Why this format? What is our return? What is the role of this event? And what is the strategy? But yet again, when you talk to some boards, are they willing to adjust the registration fee, or are they still looking at, no, you have to deliver all of the same things at the same price, but not considering the market value? So when all of this is changing, are we really in the position not to rethink our formats? And I'm really struggling with my clicker today. So what we are talking about are where the formats need to change, not the values. Associations and their meetings are still there to create community and connections, provide an ecosystem where people can share knowledge, deliver impact for their attendees, but also for the destinations where they are holding their event. But what isn't a value, a keynote isn't a value, the ballroom isn't, or a 3-day agenda. What has really changed is the environment in which we are designing. And our decisions must be much more intentional. And the word intentional is, for me, the buzzword of 2026. It has been for a long time, but I think now is really the time when we need to think very carefully. Are we sticking with something just for the sake of it because it's familiar? Or should we change something? When we change something, what should it be? Because what we are not saying here today is you need to change everything. But which elements are truly essential and which ones are just there because they've become a habit? And as you hear things, please feel free to put notes in the chat if something resonates. If you have some obstacles, especially if we are not touching on them, please feel free to share that. We'll keep on monitoring the chat to see if we can address anything. Before we even start, I want to go back to the purpose. Why does this event exist? And while you're at it, please type in the chat one sentence. Why does your flagship event exist? When we talk about purpose, it's not your mission statement. It's not what last year's theme is. We really want you to consider what is the purpose of the meeting, which will make people take time away to go, travel, take money, and create the full attention to your meeting now. Is it just because they have to consider to get their CEUs, or is it for them to connect with their peers and dive deeper into the research or help with a certain medical issue in a destination? But when we look at the purpose, we want you to also ask yourself, is that purpose I've just put in the chat specific enough to guide any trade-offs? If, for example, our attendance dropped by 20%, would that purpose still justify the event? And if a sponsor asked for deeper integration, would the purpose guide that decision? Why we are going back to the purpose, it's your starting point for everything. It's your guiding light. And when the purpose is clear, formats can truly evolve.
And I just want to quickly add here, just looking at all the comments in the chat, that I think it's very clear that we all know our purpose, right? Like it's almost like a default in your response. And but at the same time, if you're looking at everyone's comments, is there's just a lot of similarity, right? It's our community get together, it's to provide education, it's to provide networking. But at the same time, and I think that's kind of why it's very important to ask that question. Sometimes that might be a little hurtful, is but why they need to do all those at your flashy events, right? Like when we're talking about we provide education, but we all know there's so many other options. No matter what field are providing that, you provide networking. There's different way to do networking, and also, do we really need to network? I think there's a lot of the profession that the networking term might be very different in some of the professional field, right? So, how are you stand out? I think that's kind of what we want to challenge everyone, and to have that conversation internally within your team, and also sometimes within your board. And sometimes it might not a different answer, right? Sometimes it might still be education, it's networking, it's community. But then the question will become, how can I do better? Right? How can we do this that no other alternative option can do? Or are we provide anything that are uniquely only us should provide? So for example, I think one of the chat there is talking about your meeting is where the legislation updates been happening in your field. And how can you make sure you are the only place the legislation update will be happen, right? And then I think there's comments. I think one of the comment is your meeting is, although people are in the same field, but your meeting are the only place different functionality profession will be able to connect and meet. I think that is also a very unique objective, which is you create that cross-functional networking opportunity, right? So back to kind of what Zenya say is the purpose is like sometimes they seems very easy to understand, right? Like you are able to type in your purpose right away in the chat. But I think we should all have this practice is almost every year, especially for some of you just finished your conference, right? Like asking that question, but are we still doing that? Like, are we still be the one who be able to deliver that purpose?
And I haven't even touched on the question of do you need to meet in person? And is there something you deliver in person only versus could you deliver that same value and purpose when you are in an online environment? So though, but some of those things will actually touch through the various design elements. And here is the small decision framework which we've put together for today. These are the 7 categories which we'll be touching on. They are taking our theory and our strategy to the practical. So when we talk about the purpose, is it that means asking ourselves, who is this event for? Who's our audience? What content actually is advancing our purpose? How are we structuring the participation? Where, as Sean just said, networking, there's so many networking models. How are we structuring the revenue model? How are we designing the pricing structures? Is that part of our strategy, as it should be? What role are our sponsors playing? Is technology helping us or is it distracting? Do we have some low-tech solutions as well, which we're considering? And how, in the end, will we know and define that our event has succeeded? What we really like about this way of thinking is it's very practical. It moves the conversation from the abstract to design, to go from, oh, we just want better experience into very specific choices. And without further ado, this is what our design will look like. And I'll stop sharing and Sean will share instead. So, Sean, do you know
Yeah,
who
sorry, I
our
was on mute.
volunteers were to spin the wheel?
Yes, let me get the link out. So I'm just gonna randomly choose, and I have already shared the link to all of you. So I think Sarah, so hopefully you will be able to hear from me, and then if you check the chat, you should see the link that I shared with you already. So Sarah, how about you go ahead? Sarah, let me know if you are able to see it. Oh, having trouble finding the link. That's okay. So it's on top of your chat. There is a separate link that is only sent to you. Let me know if you see that. How about let me start? So to give people kind of an ideas of how to do it. So I'm going to first start. And so saying yeah, the first one we like to discuss is audience.
Oh, my favorite one. So this is really where we're talking about who are we designing for? And by nature of associations, we are so inclusive. So we always think we need to design for everybody, for 100% of our attendees. Yet again, do we have enough data? And I will be talking about data the whole morning here. Do we know the percentage of our members coming to our event? Why are they coming to event? And are we designing with our audience in mind? Sometimes people are not coming or not registering because the value, the proposed value or the perceived value of your event is just too generic. It's not talking to the 60% of your audience coming in. And I see Sylvia is asking what kind of wheel we are using. It's a free wheel, Sylvia. It's called wheelofnames.com, and you can create your own wheel and your own design. So and you can make it public as well.
So I just shared the link in the chat.
Perfect. So one of the questions I always think, how can we design for your most loyal, for your most engaged 60% of your members to be very intentional? Because as that engagement, as you're talking to your audience in a very specific way, then you suddenly will attract also those who are maybe on the outskirts. Does this mean we are eliminating or excluding some of our members? Not necessarily, especially because I'm also very passionate about designing for neurodivergent attendees. That is a totally different facet. And I think when you are designing in terms of content towards your largest group of audiences, but when you're designing for the experience level, I think you should keep the neurodivergent lens in mind because that will speak to everybody else coming as well. So you should really make your events much more humane in that respect.
And I think to add on what Zenya say is, in my opinion, I would say from the audience perspective is the importance of again asking the obvious question is who are our audience. I can give you an example. Is I used to work with a medical association group who are facing a traumatic challenge of decline attendance. So the conference used to be a couple thousands people and now it's only a couple hundred, right? So it's a challenge, it's revenue down and the struggle of the meeting quality is got shrinking because less attendee. And so what we did is we went through a deep dive with them together to identify why they are declining. And the result is surprisingly positive. The reason they are declining it was because the medical conference was created to solve a specific disease challenge that used to have no clue, no clue. So if you get the disease, just unfortunately you're gonna die, right? So it was a hot topic in the medical field because everyone want to study it. Everyone want to see if they can find a solution and cure. And lucky to the collective knowledge of us, we find a cure, right? So it's at that conference the potential paths being discussed. It's at that conference the vaccine sample be released. It's at that conference the announcement of the FDA approved happen. So that disease right now is 95% curable. So of course the conference was declined because there are no legitimate reason to continue studying because it's already been solved. So the question now completely switching is how can we actually build on this foundation and find a new challenge to solve, right? So the conversation about the audience had changed dramatically from a single, very isolated, specific expertise. Now, because of that layer with a lot of different other audience, right? So sometimes like if your conference are facing the client issue, which is I think a lot of us are, it's worth it to kind of asking that question is like, is our audience is actually still there, or we actually have a different type of audience? And then the second is kind of echo what Zanya say is like a lot of the time that we kind of get used to it is we're designing the events to the same type of people. They are all our member, or they are all engineering, they are all cardiologists, they are all physicians. But the reality is, even they are all cardiology, you're going to get the senior cardiology who maybe appreciate a bit more quiet space so they can talk to each other. They maybe like to have the chance to mentor people. But you're also going to get the postdoc or the fellow student who are hungry of connecting with their peer and who want to connecting to a potential fellowship opportunities. And you're also going to get the doctor from Africa who want to expose to anything. Then you got doctor from UK who probably have a unique challenge. They only want to talk to people from Panama, right? So you are designing an event to very diverse group, even they are considered one single layer of audience. So it's important to create a different type of journey for your audience. And yes, neurodivergent is a very important one. Generation is a very important one. Gender, geographic, cultural is all a very different one. So it's the important notes is to identify kind of what path makes sense for you and then go from there.
And we'll chat about that even more as we go through the different other categories, because everything is very interlinked. But the question of segmentation and how do you design the journey? I mentioned very at the beginning of our session that you are literally designing 1,000 events if you have 1,000 attendees. And with segmentation and with technology, we are having the capacity, which we didn't used to have in the past, to help our attendees have those very personalized journeys.
So yeah, should we move on to the next
Yes,
one?
absolutely. I don't
All
know
right,
if
Sarah
anybody
got
has
the link
found
now.
their link,
Yeah,
please.
Sarah find the link now. So Sarah, how about you go ahead?
Yes, no, spin the wheel.
Then yeah, like so
No,
I shared the same link to people. So it's not a different link, right?
no. It's the one, not the wheel of names, which is on top, but it's the one I sent to you.
Yet she did spend, but it clearly didn't show.
Okay, well, then we'll just,
It's select revenue. So let's go with
okay,
the revenue.
let's go with revenue then.
Yeah. So what is the part on the revenue?
That was you, but I can
Okay.
kick off if you want.
Yeah, how about you kick it up?
So the revenue is really part of your strategy. We all know when we are doing the pricing for our registration fees, and I did mention already that a lot of the boards are setting our expectations differently, and they don't want to increase the registration fees for the attendees, but at the same time, the costs have gone up. So what signals are we sending to our attendees even before they have registered? The pricing of the registration fee is sending a signal. It's not in its in on its own. You have to consider it as part of your strategy. Early bird, for example, does this really work? One of the things you mentioned in a chat before we started off was that your attendance is dropping. But what I'm also seeing as one of the huge trends is that attendees are coming in very late. There is even new statistics from last week which are showing that up to 20% of attendees book in the last week to up to your event. How do you even budget for that? How do you secure enough food and enough venue space if you can't rely on that? And I do think the early bird as a model, it has a little bit outgrown its own purpose. But what you could do is to encourage people to register early, not just make it nominally cheaper, but potentially use that as a strategy. If you are registering early, you will get XYZ exclusive access to a group of people, to certain content. So to really encourage people to register early and get that revenue in early, there are tips and tricks to do that rather than just go, oh, early bird fee is this.
Yeah, and I think like when we're talking about revenue, that another thing what we see from some of the other associations is quite doing quite well is the repackaging, which is I hope many of you are doing that. So it's not you need to record every session, right? But it's more about you record a selected session, but with the editing version that we'll be sharing. And so that what will happen because we all know that like a Zoom meeting and webinar is very different than a live events. The experience is quite different. The deliverable is quite different. So you definitely need to make sure you editing then after that. But we did notice that that is starting to get increasingly popular in terms for some of the contents and especially to counter some of the registration challenge, especially earlier we're talking about international travel being a challenge for many part. This can be an alternative that you still capture those audience. There's another thing which has also happened quite a lot, specifically for association based in Asia, which is they will buy licensing from the International Association or the American Association for some of their content. So for association here who are like if your association is in your field is more prestige, which is the education coming from your conference usually hold weight and credibility. People would like to ask and receive, and so in the past, people will budget and travel come to your conference. this might be a path to consider, which is consider creating a post conference package that you will be able to licensing out to some of the other regions or some other association who might be a bit more smaller and can benefit from your contents. So looking at this in a little bit more dynamic way, I think is kind of the way to go in today's climate that you cannot just solely based on registration and sponsorship. I mean, we do have another well is on sponsorship specifically. We can talk later. But revenue, there's many different type of revenue that we should looking into it.
100%. And you touched on a couple of like that licensing opportunity. More and more associations are looking at that licensing models, especially when we are talking about US-based associations who are having a lot of very credible content, and it's very sought after in countries of Africa or on the Indian continent, where you can repurpose some of that content and then with added flavor, local flavor and local examples. That type of revenue model is coming up more and more and is a huge non-use revenue model supporting associations.
So I know, Sylvia, that you have a question about licensing. We can talk a little bit more on that, but like let's kind of make sure we keep the trend racking. Zenya, are you okay? We move on to the next
Yes,
will.
100%.
S-
Yeah, Sylvia, we can also take this offline if you
yes.
want.
So so Ryan's, you should have the link. I resend a different link to Ryan, so hopefully it will help. Um, which is show. I don't like it look a little bit different on my screen than yeah.
I
Okay,
do.
so Ryan's being on revenue again. How about let's split again and to see if you can come up with a different one.
So whoever spins it, can you remove it from the wheel, please? Then we don't have a double one. Content.
Content. Okay.
And you touched on the content part already a little bit, Sean, with the
Yes.
repurposing. So we can just stay on that if you want.
Sure. But I mean the thing for content there is also oh sorry. Well I'm gonna keep the will here and we're just gonna do it
Okay.
because it's
Yeah,
apparently
I
the
think
link
that's
is
that's
not the
probably
right link
best.
for everyone. But talking about content, obviously repurposing is one that we're just talking about and like licensing is a kind of a very different it's a complete different category to looking at it. But content is also there's much more, right? I think it's back to the question to the group here is how can we like what are the content our audience really need? Especially if you're coming from a medical or scientific association that I think it's a very normal that you go through the abstract process, you select different scientific paper, people need to present their findings, and then you are using the oral presentation to talk a little bit more, right? It seems like very generic, right? But are there any other things? But is it really helping your audience to learn? Like there's a few type of a new type of program that we saw lately from various different associations that worth to consider including it. I saw one of the association using escape room, which is they're creating a escape room in the middle of the conference and they invite everyone to go through it, right? Because it's using the escape room in some way to simulate the environment that can relate it to their professional field. I saw a live demo in a medical congress before, which is they do live streaming from a hospital with a live surgery. Will the doctor basically, which is a little scary actually, like by looking at that from a non-professional way, but it was very well received because it was directly related to their field, and then they can have the conversation with the doctor right on the spot. We see a play on role play, and obviously, I think right now we are all very used to the format of the tech talk, which is the shorter version of the presentation. But there's also another format which is widely adapted in the architectural work, which is called Picha Kucha, which is, if correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's roughly about 20 slides. Each slide have 20 seconds, which is really force you to concentrate the message you want to deliver in one slide, and then you move on to the next one, right? So there's many different type of way you can deliver contents, and back to the audience question. Uh,
It,
yeah,
so
Sarah,
Sarah, the format, you write it Pecha Kucha, but it's actually pronounced Pechachka.
oh really?
Yeah, but that's okay.
There we go.
Everybody knows it
Yeah,
as
everyone now
Pecha
is calling Picha
Kucha.
Kucha. But kind of to wrap it up before we send into Sanya, it just I think it's really important to back to that question is who is our audience and how will help them to learn and what do they need to learn. Anything to
So
add,
one of
Sanya?
the things I also want to raise with the content question is how are you involving your audience right from the start? Okay, there is a lot of healthcare and scientific where people submit their abstract, but how flexible are you with your content? One little design idea could be that in a certain number of time slots, you have an empty space and you say this is an empty slot, and that will be driven by the first 100 who register can put on sessions of what they want to have in that time slot, connect with each other, do design lab, innovation labs. Start thinking of how can you free up some of that space and pull in your sponsors, your attendees who really want to share something with their audience, with their peers.
So just cautions on the tons. I know we only have 15 minutes to go. So how about I'm going to swing, and I apologize for those who are potentially helping earlier. Um, let's go to engagement. I
Oh,
think
that's
Sandhya, you
my
have
favorite one.
you have a lot to
Engagement,
say.
engagement, engagement is something which is critical because while in the virtual environment we can do some engagement as we are doing here, that is your golden nugget where you can really have the in-person, very unique environment which will create that fear of missing out for anybody who hasn't been at your event. And when I talk about the engagement, you can make it very simple, very high tech, but also very low tech. And when I'm talking about engagement, it doesn't mean your networking break is just a little bit longer and then your keynote goes over and then you're back on track. You really need to be intentional. If you are designing a networking break, how can you facilitate the networking break to be much more intentional in terms of engagement? One great example was what we've done at the ICA Congress 2 years back. We created a whole environment where there was continuous engagement. We called it the festivalization of meetings. We had 4 breakout rooms in one big hall with all of the coffee breaks, all of the little campfire sessions and workshop areas all in one space. And you could have a private meeting in a nook, but then you finish and take your coffee and grab and go to a session which was interesting, or you can just grab a campfire session or a poster session and walk through it. It was continuous movement. And I think if anybody has seen the LinkedIn post from Julius Solaris on South by Southwest in Austin, they had that down to a T this year. And whoever wants for me to send that link through to his video, it's super exciting, gives you super many ideas on how to create. They had thousands of people and not one venue. They were just going continuously. They had activations, and it was really that festival atmosphere at its best.
Yes, there's a lot of clearly this is a big topic for everyone as well. There's a lot of good idea sharing the chat and encourage people to do so. My favorite so far is the reverse career fair. That is such a brilliant idea. There are a question here about how to make poster session more engaging. So if anyone have done anything special, please share it. And I think the youth conference example is also very well. So I think like, from the engagement part for me is back to what we have discussed is who is our audience is how they like to engage, right? Because the and then sometimes generation is not really the answer. A lot of people think young people like the loud party engagements ways. The reality is probably not, right? And I think it's more and more, and we see that in many different association event is people are craving more quality time to connect. So the traditional loud noise reception, pumping out music, people cannot hear each other, might not cut it anymore, right? And 15 minutes break between session might be too short right now. We work with the association back to the days, which is a scientific journalist association. And one of the things that they really want to do at their conference, which is had a 3 hour lunch. So which is at the beginning was very scary for me as the event organizer. We end up actually, I think we're really well for that group particularly. I'm not saying it's good for everyone, but that group is it's all about interactive connection, and they like to talk and talk among their peers. So to not have a 1 hour very restricted lunch and people need to go to different places, we allow them to have a more time to just naturally engage and they actually get more out of it. So those are the things that is just worth to keep that in mind.
And I know, Sean, we still have a couple of categories left, so let's move to the next one.
Quotes and measurement.
Oh my goodness, I'm on my soap opera here with the
All right,
measurement.
go ahead then. Yeah.
Oh, and here comes my word again. You have to be intentional. Data, data, data. You have to be intentional. What you're measuring, just beyond your attendee numbers, you need to start collecting data of who is coming, what kind of segment of your members are they. But you also have to start it at very early. What is the desired outcome of your meeting? What is the impact in the society or in the destination you're meeting? What is the desired impact for your audience? And this comes back, I'm going very nerdy now. We are meeting, and meetings have at the core the theory of change. So we shouldn't be meeting just for the sake of meeting, but we should have at the core that we have a desired outcome for us, whether we want to eradicate a disease, whether we want to encourage innovation in a certain space. If this is at the core of what you want to have as your desired outcome, you can't have only keynotes as formats. You really are designing with the end result and what you're measuring with that in mind. So we're talking not only about the return on investment you're measuring, but you're also talking about the return on emotions, on engagement. Those are some of the new terms in today's meetings world, which are coming up more and more, and the return on objectives. I don't
So
know
the
how
only
many of you are actually creating an ROI form for your attendees. And I know ICA has designed that, and it has a template for associations, which you could literally just take and have your own association objective in there and make this available for your attendees, where they can be responsible for their own journey as well. So I would really strongly suggest, if you have not already designed your own ROI template, which helps your attendees measure their engagement, their objectives, to reach out to Sean or myself and get that template which ICA has created.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And I know we are less than 4 minutes, so maybe we can just do one more, and then yeah, you can kind of close it up. I'm mindful for everyone's times. And so this is about sponsorship. I think we actually we all talking about all the different things already. I think for sponsorship is sponsor today are also asking for different things, right? I think it's the same type of question. It's just asking to a different audience. Like, is the traditional sponsor still the one that we are going after? Is the what are the sponsors really want right now? What they want before might not necessarily is what they want right now. Obviously, we see more and more from different association. The sponsor is asking not just for brand opportunity, but more opportunity to engage with the people they want to engage, right? So it's not necessarily a keynote sponsor anymore, but they're willing to invest almost the same amount to just talk to 10 very curated people. Right. So sometimes that might be the case. And some of the sponsors would like to launch their products at your events, right? Some of the sponsors would like other people to have the chance to try it. So to ask those questions, I think is very important. Anything else to ask, Daniel?
No, I think we just need to wrap up because we are mindful of the time, and I do want to ask one last question. So if you just stop sharing and I can start sharing.
Here we go. And I know that everyone we're doing this is like the wheel, so it's all run very, very fast. But hopefully this is just the start of the conversation, right? We encourage everyone to continue to expose and to explore different ways. And you don't need to do them all at once, right? You can, like many of you already did, is you try one smaller things every year. If it stick, you continue. If you don't, you move on.
So if we would spin the wheel randomly, would your event hold up in every segment? And that's for your private reflection, but put in the chat, what's one design decision you will question this year as you go along? And have we been able to inspire you with some of it? And before we leave, I just wanted to remind you of some of the key takeaways from here, from today's session. It's really the values which are the ones which are enduring. Our formats are optional. So design your events with purpose in mind, design across all of the different categories. Audience segmentation beats designing for everybody. Pricing architecture is part of your strategy. You need to build it into your marketing. Sponsors want a structured opportunity and measurable outcomes. Replace one keynote with a designed interaction and align your ROI, ROO, and ROE before next year's planning begins. We are not talking about big shifts. We're talking about small intentional design shifts, not large scale overhauls. And thank you so much for your attention. We will share the PDF, which has on each of the 7 categories some key insights, the presentation itself. So we'll share that with Nicole along with the ROI template. She can do as a follow-up. And if you want to connect with us, please feel free to do so.